Welcome back to Teenage Nightmares, the place that drags you deeper into the world of the unknown. In tonight's chilling episode, we hear from Eddie as he shares his terrifying experience. So sit back, get cozy, and enjoy a Teenage Nightmares original. One Bad Night. Hello, my name is Eddie, and to tell this story right, we have to go back to the winter of 1997. That was the year me and two of my friends decided it'd be fun to explore a creepy forest just outside our hometown of Centralia, Pennsylvania. It was a cold, dark night, and we were just bored teenagers looking for something to do. We had no idea that what started as a simple adventure would turn into the worst night of our lives. It was about a 45-minute drive to the forest in question, but honestly the ride up was the fun part. We spent most of it joking around and just enjoying ourselves. But the moment we pulled up to the edge of the woods, that all changed. A heavy unspoken dread settled over us, but none of us said it out loud at the time. We were too caught up in the excitement of our so-called adventure. George parked the car, and we stepped out into the cold, dark night. As we walked toward the narrow trail that led into the trees, Gary suddenly stopped. "I've got a bad feeling about this," he said, with a pale look on his face. George and I just laughed, calling him names and telling him not to be a baby. The idea of backing out seemed ridiculous. We were already there, but waiting in the car alone? That seemed worse. So, reluctantly, he followed us in. About 30 minutes into the hike, we heard something. At first, it was just faint footsteps. We froze for a second, exchanging nervous glances. But then we brushed it off, convincing ourselves it was just an animal. And with that, we kept going deeper into the forest. About 20 minutes after hearing the footsteps, we began to hear voices. We couldn't tell where they were coming from, but we knew they were close. Not close enough to understand the words, but close enough to know we weren't alone. That's when Gary broke down. He started crying, begging us to turn around and leave. And for the first time, George and I didn't argue. We were ready to go. Whatever thrill we were chasing had turned into something much darker. Every direction looked the same: twisted trees, thick shadows, and endless silence. Then the voices got louder. They were calling to us now, whispering in unison, urging us to come deeper into the forest, into the darker parts where even the moonlight didn't dare reach. All three of us were frozen in fear. We didn't know who or what was calling our names, but we all knew one thing: we didn't want to find out. Without saying a word, we ran through the trees, stumbling over roots and ducking low branches, just trying to find a way out. Instead, we found an old beat-up cabin in the middle of the woods. None of us wanted to go in. But the voices were still out there, and now snow had started to fall. The wind was picking up. It was freezing. We didn't have a choice. Inside, the cabin was surprisingly decent. Dusty, sure, but it felt solid. Safe. Cozy even. And compared to what was outside, it might as well have been heaven. Still, we were trapped. This was 1997. Before smartphones. None of us even had a cell phone. There was no calling for help. No GPS to save us. Whether we liked it or not, we were stuck waiting this out until morning. George, always the guy to lighten the mood, pulled out a deck of cards. He never went anywhere without him. We sat around the wooden table and started a game of poker, trying to distract ourselves from the nightmare outside. An hour passed. For a little while, we forgot about the voices, the cold, the fear. And then came the banging on the door. All three of us froze. None of us moved. None of us wanted to know who, or what, was on the other side of that door. And then it spoke. A low, gravelly voice drifted through the cracks in the wood, barely above a whisper. "Let me in," it said, in a cold and dark tone. We didn't answer, didn't breathe. We just sat there, staring at the door, hoping that if we stayed quiet, it would go away. But Gary was always the curious one. No matter how scared he was, he needed to know. He slowly stood up and walked toward the door. George hissed at him to sit down, to leave it alone, but Gary didn't listen. He leaned in, trying to get a look through the small window near the top of the door, trying to see who, or what, was asking to be let in. Before we could even ask Gary what he saw, he let out a scream and stumbled back from the door. His face had gone pale. His hands were shaking. "What did you see?" George asked, already sounding like he didn't want to know. "A nightmare," Gary said, his voice trembling. Dread hit me in my gut. Gary then raised a trembling hand and pointed to the small window near the top of the door. We turned and looked. Staring back at us was a man, or at least something that looked like one. His eyes were wide, black, and empty, like staring into the night itself. His face was twisted in a manic grin, teeth clenched tight, and there was something so wrong about him. There was something inhuman in the way he stared straight through the glass, straight at us. That was all we needed to see. We knew he meant us harm. Without saying a word, the three of us sprang into action. We pushed the table, chairs, and every piece of furniture we could find up against the door, our only barrier between us and whatever nightmare was standing outside. We were trapped, and we could only hope the door would hold. He just stood there, watching, waiting for us to come outside. Hours passed, and still, he stood at the window, motionless. Eventually, exhaustion took over. One by one, we drifted off to sleep, despite the fear clawing at our minds. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was that Gary was gone. It was just George and me. I shook him awake in a panic. "Where's Gary?" I asked. George rubbed his eyes and looked around. He didn't say anything at first, just shook his head slowly. We checked the window. The man was gone, but so was the barricade. The door stood wide open. We stepped out into the pale light of early morning, calling Gary's name, hoping he'd just gone out to clear his head. We spent hours combing the forest, yelling until our voices went hoarse. All we ever found was one of Gary's sneakers lying in the middle of the woods. Eventually, we made it to our car and drove to the nearest town, then called the police. They searched the area for weeks. No sign of Gary, no sign of the man. They told us he was probably attacked by a wild animal, or that he'd gotten lost and froze to death during the night. But George and I knew better. It was him, the man from the window. We tried telling them, but no one believed us. They said there was no evidence of anyone else being out there with us. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing. So what was he? A man? A demon? Something that walks only when the world goes still? We'll never really know. It's been decades now, and I still dream about Gary, his scream, his face, the way he pointed to that window. George and I are still close. Every winter, we return to those woods. Not because we think we'll find him, not anymore, but as a tribute, to remember. To Gary, wherever you are, I hope you found peace. And to that damn thing at the window, I hope I never see you again. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy original creepy stories like this one, then don't forget to like and subscribe. Help me reach 100 subs.